5 weeks out from Chicago Pro. A change of title now needs to happen. We've booked the trip. Everything's scheduled out. Pretty excited about it too because it's the day before is my birthday. It's just like always where Chicago lands is July 20th. Compete the next day. So Renee asked me, what do I want? I said, just plan me a surprise trip post-show. So she's making the itinerary of where we go, what we do. So be kind of like a little adventure afterwards. So pretty excited about that. But anyway, for this week, unfortunately, I got sick, and I'm still currently sick. So let's see, not two nights ago, my throat started getting really sore. And that night, I woke up, and man, it was brutally sore. Didn't sleep at all. Got up first thing in the morning, and that's all I had was just like this really intense sore throat. So I thought it might be strep throat. So I went straight to urgent care because if it is strep, I didn't see white pockets back there. It was just like my tonsils just look red and inflamed, but you would need an antibiotic. So I wanted to jump on something if that was the case. I had rapid COVID tests at home too. Wasn't what it was. So it was either could be strep or just a common cold or tonsillitis. Went to urgent care and it wasn't strep. And it was just like something viral or bacterial. They can't really rule it down to something. Basically so I'm one day now past that. Last night, took some ibuprofen to be able to sleep with the sore throat. Got some different I have a colloidal silver it's a homeopathic means it's an antiviral spray. I got some different lozenges. That and then along with the ibuprofen to reduce inflammation, I got some decent sleep last night, and I woke up, the sore throat is gone, relatively, but now it's kind of runny nose, sinuses, a little bit came into my chest, so this is now like for sure like a cold, which sucks. We're gonna go push, and we'll just see how it goes. I'm pretty sure there's gonna have to be some volume adjustments because I just don't feel 100% because of the sleep issue. Bumped up my zinc, my vitamin C. Already have a lot of vitamin D present. So just stay hydrated, keep sodium intake up, just per the norm. Just tough on prep. It makes everything so much harder, like working, training, cardio, everything. So a good rule of thumb, like with sickness, if it's above the throat and there's no fever, you can train. Below the throat and fever, don't train. So especially with fever, because you're really fighting off something, that's going to take priority over any anabolic processes, muscle building processes. Be really easy to dig yourself into a hole. So plan wise, I'm definitely getting leaner. Can see it in my face, can see it in my lines coming through. I'm not at my check-in day yet, so that's yet to come, but haven't changed the plan overall, and starting to come down to some new body weight lows. Still running the same diet, 260 grams of carbs, 300 protein, 50 grams of fat. Off days, it drops to 175 carbs and 40 fat. So that's the diet plan, hitting 15,000 steps per day, no direct cardio, and still managed to do that. Luckily, yesterday, the day that I felt the worst, it was my off day, so I just rested the day. Still ended up getting enough steps in, but just try to stay inside and out of the heat, because that's been an issue here in Texas now. We're starting to get into the high 90s and touching the hundreds, so it's something to be aware of, especially if you're on prep right now. That heat, you're going to start drinking more, and make sure you bring up sodium intake at the same time, or you might run into some hyponatremia or low blood pressure, especially if you're on the tail end of prep. But anyway, I think this sickness will be kind of short-lived. We'll jump over to the gym. We'll get a push session in, see how that goes, and hopefully we have a decent one. All right, we're here to do push B today. So this is going to be the day that I start with an incline press as my compound movement. Take y'all through the session. Overall, feeling okay, even with being, having this kind of cold that's going on. My last push session was garbage. It was so bad, but the pull session increased, so we'll see how performance is this section. Auto-regulate it if we need to, but let's get rolling. So the lateral raise was okay. It was the first set, dropped a rep off. Went in my second set, I think I just had better positioning. I was able to actually pull out 2 more reps. The perception of effort is higher today, making me realize like fatigue is a bit higher. So third set, I left the same load, ended up getting 9 reps, which my last session, I dropped load and went to 13 reps. So suddenly realized like when you're coming into a session with more fatigue, at this point I'm kind of auto-regulating how much volume I need for the day. If there's systemic fatigue, there might need to be more set reductions. If I notice a big drop off in like the first 2 sets, I'll pull a set off. Now if I'm maintaining those loads and reps, then I'll usually let volume just ride and not make any changes. Other considerations around like managing fatigue too is if you're coming into a session later in prep and you are in a more glycogen depleted state, it takes a lot more to get into the higher rep sets, like 13, 15 reps. I kind of lean towards keeping the heavier loads and doing a little bit lower reps. And to put in context, we're talking like staying within the 8 to 12 range. So getting outside of 12 reps, it's a lot of work to get to those stimulating reps. So I kind of opt to keep the little bit of the heavier loads, just exercise dependent though. But again, I'm not getting down below 8 reps on anything. Like it's at least not planned that way. Sometimes it happens. But for this one, since I do feel like the total fatigue is higher today, like I'm not going to do my 4 sets. I'm doing 3 sets, and then we'll move on. So we'll move to the chest press. 2 sets are planned there. It's already pretty rock bottom volume for it, but we'll see how performance is, and that'll help me gauge the rest of the session too for volume level. I lost a rep on that first set, and the back off set went a little lighter in load just to make, because I knew I was going to have issues with it to maintain the rep target. So stayed right at 11 reps. Seeing that gym performance loss, it's going to be a thing on prep that can happen. In the moment when you're starting to see it exercise by exercise, you say like, for one, it's an assessment point. What's driving the fatigue? Is there something I could do about it? So right now it's like, oh shit, it's not me fucking up, it's just I got sick. It is what it is. What do I do now in the moment to manage that fatigue, get in here and still get a stimulus to retain that tissue? And this one, just uphold set quality and bring volume down to base, rock bottom, what I know could potentially probably retain tissue. And for that, I'll pull back all my sets to 2 per day. So my isolation work, I usually do 3 sets of push downs, overhead extension, a pec fly, do 2 sets in all those. So for example, on chest, volume wise, will be 6 sets of chest work today. My other session is 6 sets. So I have 12 sets total still for chest for the week, which is still like a moderate volume level. So to retain tissue, like if you're moving from like higher volumes to moderate volumes, upholding that quality of stimulus and managing fatigue is what it's all about on prep. Now, if you're getting down into like, you're trying to hold on like 3 sets for the week of chest, you're probably trying to chase performance too much, because at some point it might drop. Now, if you're seeing it like, hey, your whole session's fine, it's like one exercise, it's probably the exercise that you need to address. Like, especially you'll probably notice it on a free weight exercise, a dumbbell press. It's like, all right, this is a bracing issue. I need to maybe switch to something that's more stabilized so I can maintain that internal bracing and have good direct stimulus. So all this is assessment and auto-regulating along the way. The worst thing you do, you come in here and you're feeling, like you've been sick, and you're stubborn, you keep chasing the volume and try to force the loads and reps to happen, you just end up training harder. and just digging yourself in a hole. Because you could force progressions, but that's just training harder. It's not necessarily that you had an adaptive stimulus from last session. So the logbook that you see today, it's an assessment tool, it's a diagnostic tool to help me make decisions on the fly. Right, so the flat press went better. Ended up matching my first set. Lost a rep on the second set. Connection was stellar though, and I think there's a case to be made there that when this fatigue is happening, you're gonna be so tempted to be less accurate in your sets, increase the pace, and just shortchange the range of motion just to keep up with the load reps. That's not better stimulus. So the one thing we won't sacrifice on is range of motion, our standardized tempo, and our accuracy to train the intended muscle. Those do not change. Then load and reps will be what it is. Because if you start getting less than accurate with your sets, less range of motion, yeah, maybe you maintain your load and reps, but it doesn't mean it was the same stimulus. I mean, it could be much less. So those are the things that we're not going to sacrifice on. But anyway, flat press went better. I'm going to move on to this fly. I usually do a cable fly, which it's a little less stability as you're just trying to, they're less accurate because I have to move a bench in and the cables vary a bit. So this is a bit more standardized. So I'm going to go with this one. Just do 2 sets here when normally I'm doing 3. Overall, like connection and moderate pump today is good. Getting like accurate stimulus where I need to, and load and reps are just taking a little bit of a hit. But again, under the conditions of like having this cold or whatever it is, like I think it's still a successful session. Well, somehow I'm getting like a very decent pump on these flies and push downs. Triceps for one I could train very low volume and they blow up like off the first set. So still strength just a little down on them. But one thing I want to point out too is like, yes, we want to standardize the form and keep the intention on the muscle, but don't go to the opposite extreme of like, you must have this intense connection and chase the pump, and you let the effort and load drop and you slowed it down to keep that connection. Because when you are getting glycogen depleted on prep, you're going to train. Sometimes you just won't even feel the muscle contract. So you have to rely on all your external setup and your cues being in the right position that you've trained all through prep, all through off season, and set it up right where there's like no way around it. Like your pecs are gonna press in a press, right? Or triceps are gonna work in an extension. But if you start chasing the opposite thing of the pump and connection, and you let effort, load, and reps drop too much, that's the other extreme. So we're trying to ride that line of standardized form and execution and effort level to uphold that performance. And that's where you have to find it for yourself of managing that. But I think what we see more often than not is the type A chase the logbook, just push weight, too much volume, and we see this quality of trainings drastically dropping on prep for an exponential amount of fatigue now that's accumulating. And the issue with that is that you just won't get stage lean because the fatigue level is so high, you can't manage the deficit. So you can't stay in a high deficit level and pull off the last bit body fat because sleep is so deranged, gym performance is tanking so much, you're starting to retain so much fluid that you're having to do pullbacks and volume deloads, refeeds to manage it, and then you just run out of time. So anyway, that's the insightful part to prepping is managing fatigue is how you're gonna get stage lean, but also having enough time. Those are two main components with that muscle retention and fat loss. So that wrapped up tricep work. Did 4 sets of triceps extension and an overhead extension. All decent there. Decent tricep pump. Not that that matters completely, but performance held a little better on those. And probably because volume throughout the session was a little bit less, so you're not going to carry as much fatigue as the session as an entirety is a little bit shorter. Damn, my hands are dirty. Other things that for this session is to keep it a little shorter is that I usually do abs and calves on this session too. I'm gonna put calves onto tomorrow. Idea being that hopefully as I'm feeling better with this sick stuff going on, I can do calves tomorrow. That won't be an issue. I am gonna do abs though, so I don't want to do abs on my pull session, as the next day is my leg session, which even though it's more braced, it's still like stuff's going through my core, so I want the stabilization present, which I'll do the glute ham raise, abdominal crunches for that. Just 3 sets there, and they're not very taxing, so that'll wrap up this session. Another note too, guys, is like I time my rest periods on prep. I think that's important as another standardization. For one, I see people that have prep that race through their workout, whatever it may be. Maybe you want your next meal or just try to get out of here fast. You need to standardize that because that is time to replenish some glycogen, replenish creatine phosphate stores, so you can have good effort for your following sets. Other point, too long of rest periods. I think getting a little extended is okay to make sure you're adequately rested to give all into your set, but not to a point where we're getting to where these sessions are like super drawn out. But ideally, for a lot of exercises, 2 to 3 minutes is more than adequate to be fully recovered for your next period. So leaving this session, what to do about performance today? Well, I'm gonna take more Anavar pre-workout. Just kidding. But no, really, this session came down to, it's a time thing, time to recover from being sick, and I am. So just not digging a hole today. That was what needed to be done. And that way I should see performance tick back up in the following sessions. If it doesn't, well, then that's a programming aspect to address as a whole, a deficit aspect to address. It's like, can you decrease the deficit, have more food, have better training, as long as you're on track? If you're not on track, you might have to adjust training as much as you can as a whole. But at some point, guys, if you're trying to push an aggressive deficit, you can only go so low in training volume. You're gonna make sacrifices in here. And the number one goal, getting on stage, you gotta be peeled to the bone. So that is always at the forefront of my mind when I'm making changes around training. But anyway, that wraps up the session. All right, good morning, everybody. Already sound much better. I wanted to give you an update video. It was 2 days ago when I trained that push session, which was pretty rough. The next day I had pull. I was already feeling a lot better and maintained strength across that session, which was great. And that was at my full normal volume level. So today, waking up, it's check-in day and took pics. You can see my visuals here. Much sharper. I am 220.4, which is back to a low that I've been at. It's crisp. I mean, off my caliper sights, those are coming down as well. My glutes down to a 7mm. Usually once that gets to 5, I'm shredded to the bone. So just a little bit more to go there. Definitely have more energy back. Feel pretty fresh. There's a little bit of congestion in my chest, but I think by tomorrow should be 100%. So very encouraging that this sickness issue was very short-lived. Assessment wise, right when I first woke up and looked at where I was at and posing, I'm like, man, to be 220 and look like this, I do think 216-ish flat in the morning fasted. Once I get there, I'll be fully conditioned. But then to think man, you fill out and be 220 on stage, that would be sick. To sit in there well, gosh, should I even do 212? I don't want to sacrifice anything, but this might be my last year to do it. So, and then also what's that outcome? Go out there at that body weight and, be in the running, maybe versus have a real shot at being the best version of 212 that I've ever been at. And that might wrap it up for 212 of this year. I don't want to leave that regret there, knowing what could have that looked like. Then also if I'm 215, man, it's only 3 pounds to get down to. That's not a big sacrifice. I pull fiber the day before, some veggies, day of weigh-ins, just I might not eat or drink just until weight, or just kind of gauge it as I go, eat all the way overnight and still get on stage but well above 212. Then I had the opportunity there, qualify for the O and maybe do an open show for fun and go to Olympia and be my best. So the emotional side, first thing looking at the visuals, you're man, don't do it. don't do 212. But then after seeing pics and assessing, you're you know what? Nope, there still is probably another 5 pounds to pull off before you're fully conditioned. And being that close, it just makes a ton of sense. So what we're going to do this week is, for one, not take the untracked meal and just let it ride out and keep pulling down a little bit. Probably get to that 218 mark, hit a little bit of food, and then come back down the rest of the way. And since we're 5 weeks out, that should be able to land me where I'm around the 2-week out mark, being ready and able to raise food and just have maintenance calories into the show and drop fatigue off. And that would be the ideal situation. So just wanted to give everybody an update that feeling better a few days after the last section of the video that you did see, and look forward to how we're at 4 weeks out. It's all the fun part where we get really, really conditioned and stuff starts coming in wild. So anyway, thank you everybody for the support, and talk to you next week.